There you go. Oh, hang on. I've got to turn on your.
It's my first ever uni lecture, so you have to bear with me. I'm nervous.
I'm sure you'll be fine. Okay, and then just the up and down.
Keys. Cool. Thank you, John. So, hi everybody. I'm Renee. Graduated UC actually now 9 years ago, but I feel old. So I'm a registered architect. I've been working with Lighthouse Architecture and Science for about a year now. And yeah, this is a little bit of the history. I've kind of quietly stalked Lighthouse since they first started. I always wanted to work for them. And the opportunity finally came up last year and I jumped at it. But here we go. Jenny Edwards is our director. So just to give you a bit of a background, there's 11 people in our team. Jenny is a scientist, and then our lead architect, Sarah. And then there's a team of project architects working alongside Sarah, myself included. And we have 3 science staff that do our energy rating kind of side of things. But I'll get into that as we go. So, Lighthouse Architecture and Science officially came to be about 3 years ago now? Yeah. Prior to that, we were Jigsaw Housing. So today I'm going to cover kind of the history back when we were Jigsaw and up to today.
So, background, still Jigsaw Housing, PTY, LTD, so we're Jigsaw Housing company, we just changed our trading name 3 years ago. So, how that happened?
So Jigsaw Housing was a pretty innovative business model here in Canberra. It came about through these 3 directors, Andy Berry, who was an architect, Tom Henderson, a builder, and Jenny as a scientist. Yeah, do you want to give that?
Yeah, so we've all been working independently and we're quite happily working independently. Yeah.
Sorry, Jenny, could you go up?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes, just so we could be
Yep. No worries. So Tom, Andy and I have all been working independently. I was working as a science or energy efficiency consultant with lots of different architects and builders and private clients. And at that time, I was particularly frustrated with the low quality work I was seeing and how little collaboration there was between architects and builders. And Tom and Andy had already met each other and decided to do a project together on a very small block in Frankfurt, and they contacted me to do the energy efficiency rating. And as soon as I opened up the plans, I thought, oh, wow, this is different. You know, it was very smart, it was small, it was smart, great use of orientation, high energy efficiency. There wasn't much for me to improve or optimise from a science perspective, which is far from the normal. And I was really impressed to see an architect and a builder collaborating. So that's when I began working alongside them, which I did for a year before I joined the company. And one of their first ever big renovation project was actually on my own home. But we had all 3 identified that there was a gap in the market. There was nothing between project homes and high-end sort of architecture, it seemed, and nothing that was particularly smaller. It was small and smart. But Renee's going to have to talk about that. So, and I just to explain the strange image down in the right-hand corner. We won, in our second year, we won Business of the Year, which was a really nice surprise here in Canberra. But it coincided that day I'd had a hip replacement. So Tom and Andy came down with the award that night.
No, wrong direction. So this is that first house, the Franklin House, at...
How big was it?
Yeah, how big was it?
135.
135 square metres on a 330 square metre block, which is pretty small by today's standards for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-living area home. With north along that long axis, you can see it was a beautiful house, and it actually operated as the Jigsaw office for quite a few years. What else do I have here? In 2014, this house sold for 17% above the industry rate when it went to auction.
I was just telling you the story. When it was built, the big 2-story McMansion next door, the owner of which he actually got into an argument one day with Tom. He was very angry with Tom for building such a little house next door to his house because he was getting pretty down the value of his mansion. So it was very satisfying. We had 11 registered bidders and it sold for way above market value. So there's a demand out there.
Oh, this way. So this is Jenny doing some of her testing. She came from a background in biology and science communication. In 2008, Jenny was founding director of Australia's first company specialising in building envelope diagnostic techniques of thermal imaging and air leakage testing. And we still do that extensively in all of our projects. So many of you may know this, but we'll start with the basics. The average home in Canberra is replacing its entire volume of air at least once every hour. Now, in some milder parts of Australia, that's not a big issue, but here in Canberra, we experience such climate extremes, so it's a hugely detrimental to our cooling and heating bills. It's pretty easy to retrofit an existing house with draft proofing and gap sealing that can halve the air leakage rate down to 10 air changes per hour. Jenny's worked on some affordable housing case studies for the government and has suggested that this alone can halve heating and cooling bills. New homes in Europe must be built to less than 9 air changes per hour. Though through conscious construction and detailing, we find that using kind of traditional building techniques here in Canberra, the majority of our homes can get down to somewhere between 5 and 3?
Yeah,
Is that
3 and 6. And I should
3 and 6?
just clarify, when we're talking about the air leakage rate, we're talking about at a pressure differential of 50 pascals, so that's under testing conditions. So Renee mentioned at the beginning that most Canberra homes are turning over their entire volume of air once every hour. That's at normal conditions. But when we test the air leakage rate of a house, we create a pressure differential with a giant fan. So the international standard for comparing leakiness is at 50 pascals. So at that rate, most Canberra homes, or that pressure differential, most Canberra homes are between 15 and 30 air changes per hour. A lot of older homes are between 20 and 30 or even higher. Most new builds are around the 12 to 18 mark, and we're achieving well below 10 now at the 3 to 6 mark. Initially with Jigsaw, we were extremely excited to get 5. So 5 to 8 was where we were, but now with the new builders we're working with, we're routinely getting down around the 3 or 4 air changes, which there's almost a linear relationship between that leakage rate and your energy consumption for heating in Canberra's climate.
Cool. So Jenny, as you probably can guess, is pretty firm on the mantra that draft sealing and insulation need to go hand in hand. Our standard spec is nothing sort of extraordinary, just 5 R5 in ceilings, 2.5 in walls, and 1.5 in internal walls. One of the things we do ensure is that we insulate under the underside of our concrete slabs, which I'll get onto in a little bit further. We also use double glazing and low E coatings to living areas, as well as non-conductive frames, generally PVC and occasionally timber in all of our homes. Should be pretty familiar with these diagrams by now. As all architects know, the third key is the trifecta. In the trifecta is orientation. As architects, we design with the basic principles in mind, but Jenny then models the early concept to help us optimise the window sizes, eave sizes, and shading solutions to maximise the home performance. And it's quite interesting through that collaborative process with Jenny, we can often get our homes to increase by up to 1 star just through working through the EER curve. So this is just a little diagram, a familiar diagram about slab and insulation, insulation. Fairly self-explanatory. So basically the trifecta that our business has always been built on is the design for orientation, good quality insulation, and being sure that the homes don't leak, or minimising that air leakage. So that was sort of the beginnings of Jigsaw, and what they stood for. And this is the team, the Jigsaw team, back in 2014. I think some of the values that Jigsaw really have built into the business structure is this collaborative workplace. So working scientists, architects and carpenters side by side, and that's something we all really value, and it's really driven the business model today. So moving on from the original sort of Jigsaw project, you guys probably know Sarah, she lectures a fair bit. So Sarah is our lead architect, and she was hired to join the Jigsaw team to develop Jigsaw Modular. So Modular is our answer to the project home industry. It's an approach where we're able to give clients well-designed, cost-effective and high-performing homes, and we can do it at a reasonable budget. So this is just a bit of information about how the modules work. Yeah, Rachel's our master at modular. What else? Yeah, one of the interesting things Sarah did when she was first developing this was she did some ghost research with some of the local project home companies. The most alarming thing she learned in that process was how they tell her as a prospective buyer that adding double glazing wasn't worth doing because you wouldn't get any resale value, but taking off the ensuite was a bad idea for the same reason. It's kind of scary for that still what the project home builders are pushing in those shiny display villages. Over the next 6 months, Sarah developed a range of modules that could work together easily with lots of marketing material and educational tools. And that also became one of the core values within Jigsaw and our Lighthouse. We have a wealth of information that we very happily share with our clients and with others. And you're welcome to go on our website. There's loads of stuff on there that's free. This is another thing that we implemented to help our clients streamline the design process. We use a software program called CoConstruct, which was developed in America to help builders over there, but we find it really worthwhile as a method of keeping our clients' selections and all of their email correspondence in one place. Yeah. This is kind of explaining how CoConstruct works. You've got different items and you can have different options for the client. You can kind of guide them in what's a reasonable price, what's a standard or upgrade, or a custom kind of cost of things like that's the oven, what kind of fencing they can afford. And then this is the cost estimate. So on all of these modular jobs, we've got a wealth of knowledge over the years. We've done about 20 different modular homes around Canberra now. And so we've got all of that information in a database, and we're able, from the first meeting, to guide our clients in how much the home is really truly going to build. We've separated down into basic, standard or upgrade, so if from the beginning they've got an eye for the expensive, they know where they're kind of tracking or what their budget allows. So that's just an example of one of the Q&A sheets that we've got on our website. And we give a lot of this information away to anyone that inquires about business in the hopes of educating clients. So whether they choose to go with us or direct to a builder or to another architect, we hope that we've helped inform them and educate them in some of the knowledge that we have. So these are some happy snaps from when Jigsaw finished their first modular home. I missed the information about the workshop. So the modular actually came out of a workshop that Jigsaw ran, and they invited members of the public to come along and really workshop what they valued in a home and what they wanted out of it. And what was the outcome? Jenny can tell us a bit more about that.
So that's a workshop we ran back in workshops, 2011 or 2012 perhaps. But we had this idea that we wanted to see if it was possible to do an 8-star house for 200,000, I think you said, which is wrong about being able to do it for that price. But we invited members of the public along. No industry professionals were allowed. We really wanted to work with people who were living in houses, and but we did work to distill down the 4 key things they wanted from a home, which was lovely to hear from a great audience. That they wanted warmth, light, good social spaces, and good connection to the outdoors.
Sorry, go for it.
It was out of that workshop that the whole modular idea was born. So there's Andy Mary's idea initially brainstormed it online, and then we got Sarah to come on board and really get it into to a stage where we could offer it to the public.
So this is a little promo video that we had back then about it.
Hi, I'm Jenny, a scientist at Jigsaw Housing, architect
About hair.
scientist. Our philosophy is that well-designed, quality-built, energy-efficient homes should be achievable for everyone. That's why we've developed a new system for making affordable and sustainable homes, Jigsaw's modular housing. This approach began 2 years ago when we set ourselves the challenge of designing really cost-effective 8-star houses suited to Canberra. We started by asking locals to tell us, through a series of public workshops, what they considered to be the most important features in a home. Overwhelmingly, they asked for natural light, warmth, good social spaces and connection to the outdoors. And consistently, they commented on how hard this was to find, expressing frustration that many houses in Canberra are designed with no regard for our tough climate and built with little opportunity for tailoring to the homeowner's needs or their site. In response, we look for the best ways to balance aesthetics and function, build feasibility and cost, energy efficiency and comfort. The result? A wide range of pre-designed, performance-tested modules that can be configured to suit each client and their site. The foundation of Jigsaw's modular housing approach is to tailor these modules to suit each homeowner's needs. That includes how many living, sleeping and utility modules they need, the size of each, the materials and fittings, and where the modules will be positioned in the home's layout. Site and orientation are vital, so we apply some rules to the way modules are configured and where we place windows to ensure that we maximise the design's energy performance. Importantly, the system also offers homeowners flexibility and information. They're able to compare and select individual items, fittings and finishes using our online communication and project management system. Jigsaw's modular process delivers the best of all worlds, an affordable, architect-designed home built to exacting standards and tested for optimal energy efficiency. To find out more about Jigsaw Modular, read about how the process works on our website or give us a call.
So there you go. No.
Let's go 8-5.
Thank you. Oh, that's all right. Good flick back. Cool. Are you in that photo, Rachel?
Oh.
You're lucky duck.
Before I left Stewart Architecture, and we're looking at them, and I want to be on that table.
It's
so much fun.
Dance floor at the awards.
So this is sort of peak Jigsaw time, and that's the team back then, dressed up for the Architects Awards. I think that was one of the years they actually had a fun thing. And down the bottom, that's just a diagram showing the flat structure within the office. The size represents the workload, and someone partly out of the black circle worked part-time. The blue is the architecture team, the green is the construction, and the purple are the science marketing admin team. So that's kind of how how the team was structured there. They also worked really hard to create a great office culture and a very clear hierarchy, lines of authority, and different team leaders and team values. This is something that in a different iteration we still have today. Managing projects through a visual project board, working through the design stages and allocating projects to a project architect early on. So that's the design team board, and then this is the building team board for construction. Now we're up to the fun stuff, the pretty pictures. So this is another one of the other earlier modular homes. 113 square metre home on a very challenging block for a lovely retired couple who's still regular lighthouse fans. This home was just under 8 stars ER and cost around $350,000. So these are just some images of that home, affectionately known as Stray Leaf. Let's see.
And now it has a beautiful dog.
Yeah, the garden looks a bit minimalist in that one. Yeah, just some different images. Study. So that's a floor plan again. So you can see it's essentially one bedroom down here, a flexible multi-purpose room, the 2 bathrooms, and then the separated dining and living areas, which we tend to find works really well for us to our clients, having those dual living spaces.
One of the other things in this design is you saw that study shop before. That study is actually located in the hallway, so it's got a lovely big northern window that's positioned opposite a big sliding door that opens onto the multi-purpose room. So this whole hallway and this room actually gets flooded with northern light, which makes this a really nice space to be in. So they use it sort of as a library room or a reading room to retreat to, and the study gets a lot of use. But it does then close off with a nice big heavy slider to become a really comfortable guest room. So multifunctional spaces. We don't waste any space in our design, so really space efficient as well as energy efficient.
This was another modular home that was pretty nifty, that was designed for a friend of Sarah's and first home buyer. So the home's split over 3 levels, with the bottom level being her private quarters, the middle level being the shared living space, and the top being for housemates in the near future, but could be for children longer term. Her ensuite's accessible to a guest without entering her bedroom if she would rather guests use her bathroom. This is a pretty cool house. This one here. And she commissioned a graffiti artist to do some custom artworks. Pretty cool. So that's kind of the central living area. Sarah and one of our other project architects, Duncan, from their modelling days. And that's the graffiti.
That one actually won an architecture commendation in the new home category at the Architecture Awards 2 or 3 years ago. Architects have really big budget houses, so we were pretty stoked. It also appeared in a TV show called Australia by Design. So it's had a fair bit of exposure to about a little and low budget house.
Hooch. And so that's that plan again, with her bed wing down this end, and then the housemate or future family rooms, bedrooms. Don't get me wrong, we don't just do modular, we still do a lot of renovations and custom work. And these are some images of some of our renovations recently. This is one of our custom projects. So the modular has continued to develop, and these are some of the other floor plans that we've done through the modular. So as you can see, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution by any means. Each design is customised to the family and the block and the orientation. Yeah, there's lots of different combinations and arrangements. And then, what, 3 years ago? What does this say? So 3 years ago, it sort of started to become apparent that as fabulous as the business model had been, and the ability to work collaboratively across the professions, it became apparent that the design team were capable of doing sort of 30 or so projects a year, whereas the builders could only really manage 10 and only wanted to do sort of specific styles of homes, whereas the design team were keen, obviously, to take a wide range of renovations and new builds. And at that point, they kind of brainstormed and decided it was best. Maybe Jenny can talk a little bit more about where that changed.
So basically, the demand for the architecture and science side of things outgrew the capacity of the construction team. And as Renee mentioned, my builder business partner wasn't so interested in doing renovation work, whereas renovation work is always made up at least a third of our inquiries and new projects. At the moment, it's a little bit higher. So, and we've got, from a sustainability perspective, renovations are really satisfying too. We don't want to be knocking them all over the place. Often there's good reason to work with the existing home. So, yeah, after a lot of brainstorming, we decided the best thing was for us to split. So initially, construction was separated, and went off on, and we had 35 degrees, so that's really something that still exists. And they tended on a few of our projects and constructed quite a few of our projects initially. So at that stage it was still Andy and I, so the architecture and science led by Andy, or the architecture led by Andy. Andy then had some family health issues. One of his children became very sick, which made him really stop and think hard about what he wanted to do. But Andy is a very hands-on architect who has always wanted to get involved in the construction, which is another potential point of conflict between the architecture and construction side of things. He went off and got his builder's license, so he is now designing and building. He has his own small business called Think, Make, Enjoy, and he's actually constructing a couple of projects for us as well. So we still have a relationship with the other former members of the team. But we split down. We started off as an architecture and science team of, how many when you joined, Rach? Do you remember? Yeah, 6 or 7, I think. And then we grew to 9, and as Renee just mentioned, we're about to become 11, which is, I think, is the right size.
It's mid-sized by Canberra standards.
Yeah. I've forgotten all about that stage. Choosing another colours.
Yeah, the fun side. So I think obviously there were lessons learned, and I think one of the strongest things that our team has is this collaborative attitude, which sort of came about through the different professions, but now it comes through the different architects within the office, and we all collaborate really closely on all of our projects.
At the top of the internet.
Yes. So that's sort of standardised details and construction methods that were good, and we were able to work through with the builders. We've still kind of kept a lot of those in-house. But yeah, I think this is just sort of showing, going back to all those office standards. Over the last 2 years, we've been focusing on the efficiency and the systems that we have in place within the office. So that's our project board these days, and just some of the different documents that we have as office standards that we all refer to.
So yeah, when we first began this jigsaw housing, architecture, construction, and science it seemed very good about each other once we were thrown in the deep end together. And so we had a lot to learn, and we certainly didn't have good systems and processes in place. So that's we've come a huge distance since 2011 in terms of developing really consistent processes and standards. And that co-construct software that Renee mentioned was a really powerful step. And that was software that's designed for construction teams, but I spotted it just after my hip replacement and thought, this has got huge potential to be adapted to capture the design process, the design and science side of things as well. And it has worked beautifully. So it was taking on co-construct that enabled Jigsaw to go from a team of, well, initially there were only 4 of us, but we got up to 18 of us at one point. We could not have done that without those systems and software. But now that software integrates with our accounting software and our time tracking software. So we're always alert. We're constantly learning. One of the good things about our team is we're all really keen to learn, and we never stop and think, we've got this down pat. There's always room for improvement. Things always change, and yeah, we really enjoy that challenge. But yeah,
That's all good. So as well as the architecture team, of course, the science team. That's a very good photo of you, Jenny. So we also do a lot of science and advice and retrofit work. We work for a lot of the architects in town doing energy efficiency reports and giving them advice. Jenny and Keith do.
that's actually retrofitting Sarah's own home. We did the energy test and upgraded it for her first home.
So yeah, Jenny, do you want to talk to this?
On the science side of things, the energy rating software that you're probably only familiar with because you see EER ratings in the newspaper when houses are sold. And that EER rating is what we call first generation software, which is actually redundant in the rest of the country, hasn't been used since 2009. It's tied into our legislation when houses are sold here. But we actually use second generation EER software for new designs. And for major renovations, I think. And it's a really, really powerful tool, much, much more complex and sophisticated than the EER ratings you see in the newspaper. It actually takes the exact house design and construction. We build that up in the software, so the exact construction materials, insulation levels, window sizes, window performance, eave offsets, eave projections. It uses 30 years of Bureau of Meteorology data specific to the Canberra climate. They use 70 different climate zones across Australia. And it uses exact hourly solar, the position of the sun every hour of the day for an entire year. So you really can, it very accurately predicts the heating and cooling loads of designs when you're comparing one design to the other. So we can use that to test changes to designs or upgrades to insulation levels, or whether it's actually worth, the common one in Canberra is it worth going to double glazing? And in our climate, it is. It certainly is. Now that double glazing has, there's a lot more competition in the market, so double glazing's come down a lot. So we use that modelling tool. You can't see the details here, but I've tried different scenarios, different upgrades, and I can show clients the predicted reduction in their heating and cooling loads and also tell them the likely cost. So they can make bang for buck decisions, informed decisions, because everyone's got a limited budget and they want to know how to spend it best and most cost effectively. So that's something where I used to do a lot of, and then we got so busy with Jigsaw that actually this sort of eased off when we were only doing it in-house, but now we've grown the science team again. We're actually offering this service more broadly, and demand for that is increasing rapidly as well.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out here that at the top, the existing house was a 2.5 star, and just through moving through this process, it's ended up at 7.5.
Yeah.
So that's obviously been decided as the sweet point. These were extra options, but probably weighed up whether it was worth
this is
the
actually
additional
one
cost.
that is about to begin incurring.
So this is the team as of a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
So Jenny, the director, and then under each of those, Jenny's leading our science team, Sarah's our lead architect, and Keith's our operations manager. And then we've got the team of architects sitting under Sarah.
And
While
it displays a clear hierarchy, it's, as Renee mentioned before, it's actually a very flat structure. We don't, it's not a hierarchical type of business. We actually have another person here now, and there's lots of collaboration at every level, which Rach would vouch for. And
it's a good point in mentioning is like when Jigsaw dissolved and Lighthouse came up, the architect team was quite young.
Yes.
And we didn't have an in-house mentor.
Yeah.
So Lighthouse has been really active in bringing in older mentors from the Canberra community to help that young architect team still function at a rate without the experience under our belt.
I wasn't worried.
To say older architects.
It was an interesting stage to go through. I think I've got a brilliant architecture team. I do have a brilliant architecture team, and I could see that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the business on myself when we split. But they were all a bit unsure because they are relatively young. And so one of the things we do is it'll go back to becoming monthly. We've had people away on paternity and maternity leave of late. But like Ben Walker, Alan Spira, lots of other local architects have been in to brainstorm with us. We
this is our list of builders and consultants and architects that we.
So we are really big on collaboration, even with people who in the Canberra market would be viewed as our competitors. We don't see them that way. We are really happy to share what we learn. There's oodles of work out there. There's lots of potential to improve our housing stock, so why not spread the message? So, we invite them in. We provide them with lunch, and it's an opportunity for us to pick their brains, but likewise they pick our brains. So it's a shared learning experience. And it sounds all lovey-dovey, but it's really effective. It's great for morale, and we all do learn a lot. And so that's something we're sort of committed to continuing. Good one, Rachel.
So that's a picture of our office. We're upstairs above the Fishwood Markets. If you're ever kind of in the area and want to have a stick bed, you're welcome to pop up and say hi, have a look. So this is a cute little poster that we've got up in the office showing all of the jobs that we have around Canberra. It's nice and motivational to walk past and see.
Through my brain that we did this, I had no idea that we had done any projects, which just has to show how busy this day because it's stopped to reflect on it. So really powerful. So over 80 projects across Canberra. So here's a new build, knockdown rebuilds, and some new suburbs and others. Pretty much as a village.
My final slide got Jenny and I very excited at lunchtime today because we've just won the Australian Green Smart Sustainable Home Award for the lovely house in the picture down there, which is Jenny's own home out on a very small block in Ryde.
Yes, which you can come and see that we're doing on Sustainable House Day in less than 2 weeks. 16th of September, you can come along for a free tour if you want it. It's register online. Or we can organise a visit too sometimes.
Cool. That's the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Anyone? No. Yes.
If it wasn't legislated, you used the system.
If it wasn't, yes. No, we don't need her.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an architect. I'm a scientist. I really come to this from the science perspective.
As far as all rating systems for energy efficiency go,
it's a good one. It gets bagged out, but as I mentioned, that what you know about and what gets bagged out is that first generation software that's used for house server software. There's good reason to bag that out. It's not very clever. It can be really easily manipulated.
And often they don't even, because I'm also an energy assessor, and a lot of the energy assessors that do those homes, that they don't check the insulation in the walls, and they don't look in the ceiling, and they don't look under the floor, and they just sit in their car, type it on their laptop, and hit. It's also a bit controversial in that the current owner pays, or the new owner pays for it. There's all kinds of loopholes, so it's not actually done in a desire to achieve an outcome. It's just done to tick a box, and it doesn't really matter what the rating is or how accurate it is. It's just a sheet that gets attached. But they don't realise the actual cost difference that it then makes in selling the property, because each star rating, there's...
But a couple of different studies have suggested that it's 7, 8, 9 grams, depending on the... yes, absolutely. It is a good tool if it's used well and used at the right points. The unfortunate thing at the moment is for all new designs, they have to use a second generation tool, but they only do it at the building improvement stage when they have to, in advance. And by then it's too late to change the design and do it on its way. And people think, particularly, they think 6 stars is good because we've seen 1, 2 or 3 stars in the newspaper. And 6 stars in our climate is so easy to achieve. It's crazy. You can achieve 7 stars without any double glazing. It's okay. And getting to 8 stars is not hard. And Renee was very kind when she said that these days I can increase their designs by a whole star. I can't, because these days I've got a hang. I don't only do tiny tweaks. They're constantly presenting me 7.5 plus star designs. So there's not a lot of science to it you have to do. Once you learn, it's not rocket science. But now I'm on the yes, we would.
It is worth.
Second part to that.
Yeah.
Would you get much more for doing a more difficult rating system like passive house to become certified for a house?
Did you join that? No.
You better come up here so the answer is recorded.
Okay, so do we get demand for passive house accreditation?
Yeah, I guess that's the question.
Or are you interested in doing
Yes.
passive house?
I've got to work out which angle I'm going to come at this from. Passive house, for those who don't know, is the German passive house standard, which should be spelt PASSIVHAUS. But they brought it into Australia and they're doing it as passive house, English spelling, which is causing all sorts of confusion because people confuse solar passive with passive house, understandably. But the passive house standard requires you to get a house to become virtually airtight. So in terms of air leakage standards, we're talking about our houses, we achieve between 3 and 6 air changes per hour at the test pressure. With passive house, you have to get it down to 0.6. So virtually no air leakage at all. And to achieve that requires quite a different method of construction, whereas we use standard construction techniques. So there's no additional cost from fancy construction. With passive house, you have to. There's also internal air barrier membranes. You need extra service cavities. You need extra thermal braking. We've costed it on a couple of projects now, and I kid you not, it's about 100 grand extra to achieve that. Not many passive house accredited people will tell you that, but it does cost a lot more. So I'm not against it. In fact, 10 years ago when I was training overseas in New Zealand and the US, I came back super excited about passive house and thought it was the way to go. But then when I started working much more closely with construction, I realised it was going to add a lot of cost. And affordability became more important to me. So I'm not interested in it. I don't think, well, I've done lots of modelling to suggest there isn't good bang for buck. But if a client has a big budget's not a constraint, then sure, go for it. Because at the passive house standard, you can maintain an internal temperature of around 20 degrees all year round. My own house is beautiful and comfortable and uses bugger all energy, but it does have more temperature fluctuation. Nothing like a normal Canberra house, which goes like this, but my house does experience some temperature fluctuation. So I'm not against it, but it's not cost effective in our climate yet. Maybe it will become, and you're dependent on heat recovery ventilation. Because it's so airtight, you have to have what I call an HRV, heat recovery ventilation system, running all the time to ensure that your indoor air quality isn't compromised and you're not going to fall asleep from carbon dioxide poisoning. Does that answer that? Cool.
What happens, let me ask you this, what happens if you like smoky cooking and you've got a very powerful exhaust arrangement?
Yeah.
How does that affect the passive house system?
Again, that's why they have to have their ventilation systems are so much more complex, and those things have to be connected and sort of speak to each other. Whereas our approach is, once you get to our level of airtightness, you still got to start to be concerned about indoor air quality, because once you get down to around 3 air changes, then you are starting to compromise things and you're potentially going to have some moisture problems. So it's really important to appropriately exhaust moist air and to have ways of bringing, be conscious of bringing in some fresh air. On the exhaust fan approach for us, we just use standard good quality exhaust fans, so we know when we run those we are unavoidably going to be drawing in air through some of the gaps that are left in our building envelope, but we think that's a cost-effective approach. In the current houses you live in at the moment, you probably don't really need to use your bathroom exhaust fans or your kitchen exhaust fans so much because there's so much leakage in your house that it goes up into the roof cavity and into the wall spaces anyway. Once you make a house a bit tighter like we do, you have to use your exhaust fan in the bathroom and in the kitchen, otherwise the moisture, you can't see through the mist on the mirror for ages. So you have to run your exhaust fans in the bathroom while you're having a shower and for 20 minutes afterwards, things like that.
And we will be having a lecture later in the semester by Paul Barnett, who will take us through his journey in terms of passive house, in terms of risk, and how he's managed to resolve a problem with mold in the passive house building that he's designed.
That was a commercial building, not a residential.
Commercial building,
yeah.
Yes.
Paul's great, and he'll tell it to you straight too about the cost, the increased cost for residential, whereas a lot of people won't. We're having regular lunches together to talk air tightness and condensation.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now, Jenny, can I ask you? Well, I'll ask before someone else asks. What the students are doing this year is their assignment is actually to start an architecture firm from the time that they graduate to the time they get registered over a 5-year period. So what happens in terms of what kind of marketing do you do now? Do you just wait for people to come to you, or is it quite an active thing of promoting the company and new clients?
Yeah, well, we don't do a lot of paid marketing. We do a lot of social media. We do things like this. We do, this might seem like it's just an educational seminar, but it all helps spread. We're big on giving to the sort of community, and that all builds up your reputation and presence, within the Canberra community. So word of mouth is really powerful for us, but we do keep, we're up to 900 likes on Facebook, and our Instagram account's going off at the moment. We enter lots of awards because I think, well, again, you get really nice surprises. Like we won today. I didn't for the life of me. Hello, Philip. There you go. Hello.
Come in and have a seat, please, Philip.
It was a real surprise to win that award today as a really little house. But we enter awards, so we're always there reminding people that smaller and smarter is a good option. It doesn't have to be big and blingy. Yeah.
Did you not win an award at the NBA Awards recently? For renovation?
Yes. Yeah, we did. So that was for a project in Campbell. It's on our website called Basie House. It was a sustainable, won the NBA Sustainability Award, and it was a great residential. That's it. He knows the title. Thank you.
I should because I was the judge on the hand. Anyway, are there any questions? Any more questions for Jenny?
Or Renee?
Or Renee? Before we change speakers?
I was kind of curious to know how you approach other architecture practices to do their energy assessment, or if you're at the stage where people just kind of know that's your thing, so you...
I used to do a lot more EER practice. In fact, I used to do EER work for Philip, but I actually closed that down because we became so busy, as you saw in the Lighthouse involved, mainly focusing on in-house work. So I work a little bit with another architect will contact me, but I don't actually promote that so much now because I don't really have time. But we are promoting it to the general public. So people who are doing those, I've got a strong interest in people who don't have big budgets but want to renovate or retrofit and upgrade their house. They might only have a budget of 10 to 50,000, and how do they most cost effectively use that? So they're not necessarily talking about redesigning their house, but just upgrading it thermally. I promote that. Solar House Day, Speed Data and Architect, Speed Data and Architect Data Scientist was there, and that was one of the things I'm quite passionate about. I mentioned at the Recent Institute, but I think there's demand for that. We tend to focus on new builds, But there are a lot of people out there in existing housing stock that don't know where to begin in terms of upgrading it and don't have big budgets to do full redesigns. So I went off a bit of a tangent there, but I can't remember what the question was, sorry. Did I answer it?
More about how you approach another practice.
Yeah. Well, again, we have those collaborative sessions, and we'll have to have one with you guys soon. We have lunchtime, come and have lunch with us and chat about how we work in different ways and how you guys work.
Did you organise it?
No, well done. Because we've had people around maternity leave and paternity leave, so we're about to kick it off again. So we'll do that very soon. So as I said, we don't view other people in the space as competitors. We see them as collaborators, and that just seems to work. That's our general philosophy.
All right, I think let's wrap it up there. So let's thank Renee and James for that. So, okay, let's.